everybody for joining us today to talk about quizzes within onQ. I feel like there's a lot to talk about, so bear with me if maybe it goes a bit quickly, but we're happy to answer questions if they happen after the fact. So I'll get started and I'll share my screen with you. I'll turn off my video just to help with internet issues, but I'll share my screen. So quizzes in onQ. So it can help you with providing assessments within your course for your learners. So let's look at, first of all, when you log into onQ, you would come to the onQ homepage, select your course, and then look for the assessments menu and quizzes. So this brings you to the Manage Quizzes page. So you can see that I have been testing and I currently have 2 quizzes that I have created. However, what I want to talk about first is to bring your attention to the question library. So the question library really is like a best practice to enter your questions here and to build your database. So it really is like a central repository that stores and archives questions, which you can use within your course and you can reuse within your course. So it just gives you the ability to, like a storage place for the questions that you want to build to assess your learners. So you'll see on the left-hand side that there's a folder structure. So these are called sections. So what the sections are allow you in the library to organize your questions, maybe by type and topic, which can make it easier for you to find your questions for your quizzes. So it's really just for organizational purposes, but it's nice to have. If you don't want to use the folder or section structure, that's fine too. You could just create questions and they would just end up as standalone within your course, which these ones are. So let's go through what it looks like to actually create maybe a section and a couple of questions. So when you're in the question library, you click on the New button and you'll see there's a drop down, and these are all the types of questions that you can create within onQ. So there really are too many for us to go through in detail each type of question. So we'll just pick a couple today that are most common. So we'll start with the section. So again, this is a folder really just like for organization purposes. So you would give your section a title, and you can title it, as I said, by topic or maybe by the quiz that you want to offer, just for organization. So you can pick what you want to call your section. So you'll see that the text appears on the right-hand side. I now have the choice. Do I want to hide this section title from students? And what that means is if I were to use this section and the questions within the section in a quiz, the students would see the title. They would see that this is test 2. But if I don't like that, I can hide it. They wouldn't see it. Again, section test is housekeeping purposes. You can enter information here. If you do, you could see that when the quiz was being offered, the students would see this text information. So again, you can enter it. If you don't want anybody to see it, you can just hide them.
Sorry, Karla, there was a question about how do you get to the question library?
Oh, sorry, we can back up.
Sorry.
So assessments and quizzes. It brings you to the Manage Quiz page, the home page for the quizzes, and then there's a tab for Question Library. So that brings you to the repository for the Question Library.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go back to creating our section. So again, you could enter your information. You can choose to shuffle questions in this section. So that means if you've selected this section to offer the questions in a quiz, that they would appear in different orders for each student that's taking that quiz. So you can click on Save. When you come back, it will have created the folder on the right-hand side. So that again is just a section, like a folder that you can group things by type or topic. So if we want to create a new question, we'll talk about maybe true, false, and multiple choice. I think those are most common ones that lots of people use. So you have a choice. This is a true, false question. I'm going to enter my text if I can think of something to enter. Let's see. So then I decide, is that true or false? I'm going to say it's false. I decide, is this worth 1 point or 2? It's your choice how many points you want this question to be. If you scroll back up to the top right-hand corner, you'll see an extra options button. So this means that you can add extra details for your quiz. So do you want to add feedback? It would present this extra box that you would enter information for. Do I want to give the students a hint? I could do that too. Maybe a short description that they would see when the quiz question is being offered. Then enumeration adds these further details, and you can select whether you want them to be numbers and such. So when you're happy with all your choices, I'm just going to turn some of these off for now. You could come back and click on save. So you'll see, because I didn't add it within the section, but this question is just within the main part of the question library. If I wanted to decide, oh, oops, I would like that to be part of an actual section, you could do that. You could select it, and then you could click on move and choose which folder you would like to add it to. So maybe we'll create one other question, a multiple choice question. So again, you enter your text. Maybe I'll enter. I'll remove formatting just because I copied. So I would enter my specific answers. Making things up. And so now I have to decide which answer I'm going to accept as the correct one. So you can choose, if this is the correct one, I could enter 100% and I could enter 0. I'm not going to accept any other answers as a possible correct answer. However, it does give you the choice. Maybe I want to accept more than one answer as correct. I could do so. I could enter 100% for 2 options and then 0 for the others. So it gives you the option to weight the answers according to how you want to accept specific correct answers for. I could add an answer if I so chose. If I choose to randomize answers for each student, that means that whomever is being presented with this question, the answers will be in a different order for each student. So it can just help with academic integrity. Again, I have the choice to add additional features for these this type of question if I so chose. Come back and we'll click save. And you'll see again that I didn't add this to a section. That's just part of the main questions that I have within the course itself. So now that I have a few questions that have been created, you can see that when you create a section or a folder, it tells you that you've chosen that shuffling is on, which is nice, just to give you an idea that you've chosen to make sure that these questions are mixed up in random order for each student that is going to take the quiz. So once I'm happy with my question library, I'm going to click Done Editing Questions. And now let's create a quiz. Let's look what it's like to actually set up a quiz with an onQ. So I'm going to come back to the Manage Quiz section, and I'm going to click New Quiz. So under the Properties tab, I'm going to give it a title. So whatever I want this quiz to be titled, I will enter it here. And then it's really your choice how you want to set that up. A category, so that means maybe I have a topic and I'm asking or I'm assessing the students on more than one quiz. You could set up a category, kind of like a parent or an umbrella, and then I could have multiple sub quizzes below that category. More housekeeping stuff. Today we won't worry about that. We're just going to offer for quiz 1. Quiz questions, I'm going to click the Add Edit Questions button to add questions to my quiz. So I'm ready to begin to add the quiz content. I am. I'm going to click on the Import button because I want to bring these from the question library. I'm going to click import and browse the question library. So here I'm presented with all the sections and the questions outside those sections that I have entered into the question library. So what questions do I want to add to this quiz? Click the drop-down arrow, shows you all the questions that have been entered. So all right, I'm going to choose all questions from section or folder quiz 1 and click add. So this shows me that I've added 4 questions to this quiz. And if I'm happy with that number or those questions for the quiz, I can click back to settings for quiz 1. And it brings me back to the properties menu for the quiz that we've started. Now you'll see there's an additional few information that we have to fill out now that we've added questions to our quiz. So how many questions per page do we want the students to see? So maybe we can only have 4, so maybe I only want to show you 1 per page. And do I want to prevent you from moving backward through the pages? Maybe. Maybe I feel this means that once you click continue to move to a next page, that the system doesn't allow you to go back. So you couldn't go back and review any of those questions that you have already answered. That's personal preference. Some use it, some do not. I've seen some instances where it has worked very well and others where it has not. So it's really, again, personal preference. I can choose, again, to shuffle these questions in random orders for each student that is being offered the questions from this section. This icon means that the questions are already being shuffled underneath that specific section itself. Description, so I don't see many people use these options, but if you chose to, this means that if I entered a description or an introduction, this appears when they start the quiz. So any information you want to offer them when the quiz starts, you can enter it here. The page header and footer, again, this information, if entered, would appear at the top and the bottom of each page the quiz has that is being offered. Advanced features. Do you want to allow hints? Do you want to disable a right click? So that means that it prohibits users from printing quiz questions if they chose the right click option from the mouse. Again, you have to note there's just a feature here that if a user or a student was working on a Mac computer and they were using Internet Explorer or Safari as their browser, this feature wouldn't be prevented. It just doesn't work with those 2 specific browsers. But as a note, really D2L, the company that produces onQ for Queen's, recommends that Chrome is the preferred browser to use if you're going to be taking a quiz within onQ. If you choose to disable email, instant messages, and alerts, that means that the students will not have access to these features when they're taking the quiz. So when the quiz is in progress, they will not have access, I'll scroll back up, to these features within their onQ at that time that the quiz is in progress. I'll scroll back down. A notification email. If I enter an email address here, that email address would receive an email every time a quiz has been submitted. So your choice, if you want to know when all that happens, you could enter it there. So next we're going to go back up and we're going to go to the restrictions tab. So this is where you're going to set your availability and details about the quiz. So by default, when you create your quiz, it's hidden from users. So that just means that it's giving you the ability to create your quiz without anybody seeing it. So the due date, what the due date really means is just a recommended time when this assessment should be completed. Typically in the past, it had only really been offered under the assignments tool, but in the recent update, it's now under the quizzes tool. I don't find it gets used often. I feel that the availability date is really a better way to go. So the availability date, so if you set a start date, that means that this quiz will be available at this date and time. If you set an end date, that means that this is the last possible time that somebody can start your quiz. So when you set an end date, after that date and time, if you were to go to assessments and quizzes, the quiz would no longer appear for the students. So they wouldn't see that link under the quizzes tool to start. However, what you have to keep in mind is that the end date means I have until this date and time to start this quiz. And then that means I still have the amount of time that you're going to allot me to complete the quiz. So it can maybe be a bit of a misunderstanding that if I set an end date, that means that it would cut me off at that date and time, but that's not what it means. If I have a quiz in progress, I can still take the allotted time that you've offered me to take the quiz, as long as I start by this end date. Just can be a bit confusing, but as long as they start by that time, they'll get the full length of the allotted time to complete the assessment. Release conditions. So maybe I want you to look at content or view specific information prior to taking the quiz or to it being available. So you could set release conditions here. Advanced options. So this means that maybe I want to put a password on the quiz. So I want to really make sure that you've come to class and you would be offered the password to that quiz at that specific time. Maybe I want to ensure, again, you're on campus in a specific IP range. I could set one here. So if you were outside that range, you wouldn't be able to complete the quiz. You could click start, but it would tell you, sorry, you're not within this specific range, and it wouldn't let you continue. So that brings us to timing. There are two options, a recommended time limit. So that just means really what it says. I'm recommending that it should take you 120 minutes to complete this quiz. But it doesn't mean anything other than that. You could take longer and that would be fine. If I chose to enforce the time limit, that means that I'm giving you only 120 minutes plus a 5-minute grace period to complete this quiz. If you do not, if you exceed that time limit, you have to decide what happens to that specific assessment for that student. So what do you want to happen with that attempt that's in progress? Do you want to allow the students to continue working so they could, again, that just means they're free to move forward until they click submit. If you choose to prevent the students from making further changes, that means that after that grace period expires, what the student will see is the submit quiz button. They won't see continue anymore, they will see submit quiz, and that means they click on it and their attempt is complete. The third option, you can allow them to continue working, but then you're automatically going to submit, score the attempt is 0. I haven't seen that one used. It can be a bit harsh. I'm not sure that many apply that, but it is an option. I'd say most commonly used is just they prevent them from making further changes. So it just is the submit option, and that takes all questions that have been answered until that specific time. Special access. So this is really a place where you can come and you can grant extra availability or length of time for any student that may have an accommodation. So you would adjust the date and times for availability and the time limit based on the accommodation. You would find the student from the class list. You would select them. We can just maybe give this user maybe 135 minutes to complete. They get maybe an extra day to do so. And if I click add special access, you will see here the list of students that have access outside of the original time frame that you set for this quiz. You can choose to set up this quiz that only specific users have access to this quiz. So maybe you don't want the whole class to see it. Maybe you only want certain students to see it. You could do that here. You would choose allow only users with special access to this to see this quiz. Again, go back into special access and find your student from the list. So we'll go back up to assessments. So this gives you the ability for the system to grade the assessment for you. So that's although provided that you add a grade item. So if we add a grade item, we'll just go do that here. So I'll give it a name, usually the same name of the quiz that I've created. I'm going to mark it out of 10, it'd be a weight of 10, and I'll just click save. So it's added to grade item. So in order for the system to grade it and to move those grades to the gradebook, you have to select the first option to allow the attempt to be graded immediately upon completion and allow automatic grades to export to the gradebook. what do I want the students to see? How do I want them to see their score? So maybe I don't want them to see anything when they first submit their quiz. I would like to keep that as hidden until I decide that everybody has done, and then I want to release those. So I would select to override display options, and I would remove all these choices. So these mean that maybe I would see, like you can sort of see here, like a 4 out of 4. I just don't want you to see anything right now. I want to wait till all the assessments are done. Then I can click save. So you can see the student preview then disappears. How many attempts do I want you to take at this quiz? Right? Maybe you're setting them up for like practice purposes. Well, then you could choose, you could do this quiz an unlimited amount of times. Or maybe I want to give you 2 choices or 2 attempts to take this quiz. Then you decide which, if you're offering more attempts, which one you want to grade for the overall calculation. And then you choose from this list here. So if we don't use objectives, so we'll skip over to the submission view. So what the submission view is what happens when the student clicks on the submit quiz button. What do they see? So the default view, we'll click on it. So this means that when they click submit, they will immediately see your quiz has been submitted successfully. You're free to make those changes to the message here if you want it to say something different. So again, by default, I'm not showing you anything. I'm not showing you what questions you answered incorrectly or correctly. I don't want you to see anything. Just want you to see that you submitted successfully, and then I'll make changes afterwards if I so chose. So here's one that you have to look out for. So if I don't want you to see that you got 4 out of 4, I must remove this feature here. Otherwise, when I click the submit quiz, it's going to show you what your score was. So if you're fine with that, that's fine. Just have to make sure that if you don't want them to see anything immediately, then you have to remove this option. So if I click save, this brings back to the default view. So maybe you thought to yourself, okay, I don't want to show you anything immediately, but after all submissions have been viewed and I look at them and I thought to myself, I might like the student to see maybe where they went wrong. So what you could do is release an additional view. So that means that after everything is set up, you can come here and you can change what those default views were. So you would just give it a name. So when you choose when I want you to be able to see this information, so you pick the date and time. And I'm going to click on, do I want to show questions? Yes, I do at this point in time. So I want to show you now all the questions with your responses. And then again, I can show you what you got out of the score correctly. So then I can click on save. And you'll see here at the bottom now that there's an additional view. So as of June 26th at 9:23 a.m., the students could go back into that quiz and they could then see the answers to their questions. So again, that's up to you. You can go and make these changes to these settings. Just something, as I said, you do before the quiz is started. You want to set these things up before anybody starts the assessment. The reports tab we won't get into today, but it allows you to view and export quiz statistics. So it gives you a CSV file that you could look at for data analysis, maybe such as like an average score on questions by like points and percentage. So once I'm happy with my additional views, I can click save and close. Now my quiz has been created. I can see that it's set up. It currently has an I, which means it's still hidden. I have special access granted for that one student, and my quiz has a grade item. So if the I is here, you must go and make this visible to students. So you click on the drop down next to the quiz and you make visible to users. So that means that as of June 26th at 9:14 a.m., the quiz will be available for students to see under the quiz tool. If you have that I next to it, regardless of the start date, the students would not see it. So you must make sure that it is visible to students first. So once I'm happy, I have created my quiz, I can go and then add to the content tool, and I could add that activity for the students under the appropriate module and week that we were talking about. So I could click on existing activity, quizzes, and select the quiz that I want to add, and it creates a link automatically for them. So they could come to this module under week 1 and click on the link to get access to the quiz, or they could click on assessments and go to quizzes, and they would see that quiz. So one other quick thing I want to talk about under creating a quiz and the option to create question pools. So the question pool allows you to create quizzes with randomized questions. So it allows you to give students a set number of questions that would randomly be selected from a larger pool of questions. For example, let's say you want to give 25 question quiz, and it could be comprised of questions pulled from a pool of 50 questions. So each student would get a unique set of questions, and that can help with maintaining academic integrity on quizzes or exams that you're offering. So let's just take a quick look at that. So if I go to create new quiz, I'll go to quiz 2. I'm not going to do a category. I'm going to edit questions. And this time I'm going to click on add, and I'm going to choose question pool. I'm going to give my question pool a title, maybe it'd be like part A. So how many questions do I want? I want, let's say 2 questions, and I'm going to browse my library. And I'm going to choose these 4 questions. So the quiz will pick from those 4 questions 2 of them at random for each student. And I'm going to mark each question 1 point, and I'm going to click save. I can add multiple pools to one quiz. So I'll go back here. We'll go back to question. Maybe this is part B. And then maybe I'm going to choose like 3 questions, and I'll come back here. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many I have? And click add. So then from this pool, the students will be selected at random, 3 of those from those 6 options that we have added. So then we'll click save. So I'm happy with that number of selections that I've chosen. I'm going to go back to settings for quiz 2. And here you can see, so from part A, the students will receive 2 of the 4 questions at random. And again, you can see here, again, they will get 3 of the 6 questions we added to that pool in random order. So again, like this is a lot, I think, sometimes, you know, information to deliver. So don't feel overwhelmed. We're here to help in any way and answer any questions. And that sort of, I'll bring you to the onQ support site, where it's a good resource for instructors or anybody that's looking to set up a quiz. So to come to the onQ support, I just searched for onQ support and clicked on the link for instructors. And of course, it's taking its sweet time, but there are, here we go, lots of resources to come and to look at for any type of assessment. So there are some links or videos to outside to D2L and their database resource too, but it helps you with creating your quiz and setting up your quiz and to answering different types of questions. And again, we're here to help to answer any of those questions too, if some of this information may seem a bit overwhelming at times. So really that's what I want to talk about today. So if anybody has any questions, I can answer. I'm happy to do that now. I'll stop sharing my screen. So one of the drop downs started, so that just means, Beverly, that whatever the highest score, so if you had given them more than 1 attempt to complete, so whatever they got, whichever attempt they got the highest score on, that would be the information that you would see. That would be the score that you would see. You're welcome. And there are lots of like finer details in there that give you specific options, and maybe you won't get into using them all, but they are there as a resource if you want to use them. Oh, yeah, sorry. So we can look at briefly, if you want to, I can share my screen again, talk about short answers. I didn't do it just because I felt like there wasn't a ton of time to go over a large number of options, but let's see what that looks like. Back there on browser. So if we go into the question library, and new, we have like a written response. So here you're giving them the text that you want them to answer. So when they would, so you would enter your text, and then when the students would see in their view would be the text obviously that you entered, and the box below it would be presented to them at that time. I don't know if I have one specifically to see for to show you. Maybe I can back to quizzes. Let's see. If I just wondered if I had anything else already set up, but so let's just maybe see if we have a couple minutes left. We can go into the student view and see what this quiz would look like. Hopefully have it available. So anytime, just as a brief note, like you can come into the class list, and if you have a test student, you can impersonate the test student to see what your quiz is going to look like. So now I'm in the test student view. If I click on assessments and quizzes, I'll see a quiz that I have available. Of course, I did 2 quiz 1s. That wasn't very smart today. And click start quiz. Answer hopefully for all the, yes. So then this is what it looks like for a written response. So you, the student can enter whatever information they so chose, and then you're presented with the submit. So this isn't a type of question that the system can mark automatically for you. So you would have to come in and apply the mark after the fact. So that's one reason when we were in the question submission view, of the quiz, that we chose not to show the score, because if you had any written responses, question types in your quiz, the system can't mark that. So then that would maybe give the students a bit of uncertainty or anxiety associated with this specific, like it would show that they weren't doing as well as they had hoped, because that type of question wasn't actually graded to it. So if I click submit, then I'm going to see that I'm about to submit the quiz. Once you can submit, you do not return. So this one, because I had the additional view set up, it's showing me where I went wrong. But you can see that it does say that this section or this question has not been graded. So we'll click done. And I can see that minimize that, that I had completed an attempt for this quiz. So I'm going to stop impersonating the test student.
Yeah. So those are different choices.
So hopefully for that helped, and we can go over that more in detail if you have any other questions about it as well.
Thank you, Karla.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That was good. For the grading, automatic grading is important.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I posted a quiz, or not a quiz, an evaluation link in the chat. If people have a few minutes that they could fill that out for us, it really helps us with future webinars. So, and there was one more question, Karla, for Fiona. How did you start that test student quiz?
Oh, sorry, Fiona, I can go back. Let's go back to sharing again. So I went to communications and I went to class list. And your instructor role will give you the ability, if you have a test student in your course, to impersonate that test student. So then it's a good way to go and see, well, what does my quiz look like to students? So I went to communications class list and presented with the list of students in the class. I click on the drop down next to the test student and I can choose to impersonate. So now it's like I'm in the course as this test student. So then I could go to assessments and quizzes, and I could start the quiz. So again, this one, it gives you more details, so I'm not letting you go backward in the quiz because I don't feel like I want to. But this just gives you a view, as I said, if you want to see what your quiz looks like after you've set it up. So you can decide whether you're happy with it or not. So I just click to exit out of that. Just because we have a couple minutes, maybe it's something else that I just thought about. Students, when they're completing their quiz, or if they've gotten to the end of the quiz and they're presented with that submit quiz button and they haven't actually clicked submit, their attempt will still be in progress. And then they won't get an automatic grade because the quiz hasn't been completed. So you could, as the instructor, go back in and you may have to submit that attempt for the student in the end. And because I don't have anybody with an attempt in progress currently, I can't show you, but it is an option. It's something that you could reach out to us if it happens that a student realizes, oh shoot, I know I did that quiz. Why didn't I get a grade? So it could just be that they didn't click the submit button and the attempt is still sort of out there, still in progress.
There's a few more questions in the chat, Karla.
Multiple choice formats. Can we import our files? I did sort of skip over that. So yes, bro, you can. There is an option to import questions from a file. Now, it's not, it sounds really great. It's like, oh, I have this list of questions already in a Word document and I want to import it into onQ. Yes, you can. However, it's a very specific format that it must be in. And if it's not in that specific format, it will not work. So what the converter is, what it's called, the quiz converter tool, what it's designed to do is you enter your text into this specific converter tool and it converts it to a CSV file. So then you take the CSV file and that's what you would use to import into your course. But again, it has to be very specific format. And when I could send links to that documentation if you want to go down that road. But it is, can be quite painstaking at the same time. It sounds really great, but it's not really maybe as user-friendly as we would all hope.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Fiona has a question too.
Yeah, if I have 5 repeats, can they see their score on each automatic? Was there something I need to select? So Fiona, I'm just gonna maybe talk about what I think that you're asking. So if you've given them more than, like, maybe you want to give them 5 attempts, and what score do you want to see for each attempt? I think you have to make one choice or the other. I don't think you get to see all attempts, but I could test that out just to make sure after offline. But I think you have to choose which one, either the highest or lowest, or maybe an average. But you have to select one, I think.
I'm fine too. Like we're not we don't rush things when we're like, and I don't know when Greg's gonna be available.
See, Fiona was mentioning that the conversion tool. She and I have been talking about that. It's not as easy as you hope it to be. Right, so sometimes it is easier to just type in your questions rather than fiddling and fussing with the format to make sure it likes it. Maybe someday it'll get better.
All right, thanks, Steve. Great.
So maybe, so the student would be able to see if you chose to let them that they got 3 out of 5 in when you're doing the submission view. So what do you want them to see? The score. So you could show them the score that they got. Did I answer what you were asking, Fiona? Okay. Yes. So you could choose to show them the score at the end under the submission view. You can choose it there. So the default view doesn't show. I think under the default view, it is automatically showing them as the score, but some people don't like that. Personal choice. Sure. Yeah. Joanne, I think we're doing one more of the quiz spotlight. Can't remember what the date is, but
also this session has been recorded, so that will be on our website, I believe.
Yes.
At CTL.
Yes. I think Caitlin was putting it like on the YouTube channel, but we can.
Yes, she is.
Yes.
She'll be putting it on the YouTube channel.
So that's correct. Good point, Louise. Join. You can catch it there. Or join again. I can't remember as when the next one is scheduled for, but again, yeah, we're here to answer any questions outside of that too. So it's 9:42, and I don't want to take anybody else's time any longer. And again, thank you for joining. These things help myself as well. So thank you for being here, and hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you, Karla.
Mm-hmm.